So I tried a weird little experiment for 2 weeks in which I only worked 12 hours a week max. I couldn't work more than 4 hours a day, and there was like no cheating. There was no pretending that things like planning my week don't count because it's not all work. No, I included everything. I tracked it in the Toggle app because I wanted to see what would happen if I cut my work hours way down. What would be the result? And let's just say that I'm slightly confused by the results, but also delighted, but also kind of terrified about what it all means. So let's get into it. If we haven't met yet, my name is Isabel, and on this channel, we talk all about embracing your weird in order to build a better brand, business, and life. So let's go. So here were the rules for my experiment. First of all, I couldn't work more than 4 hours in a single day. Ideally, I was only going to work 3 hours a day, Monday to Thursday. I was going to take Fridays off, and I was going to track everything inside of Toggle, anything work-related count. So social media, YouTube, responding to emails, planning my week, everything counted. The only thing that didn't count was breaks, but I think that makes sense. Like if I'm getting up and I'm not working, like that, why would I track that, right? The idea was to get the things I had to do and or wanted to do done within that time span. I didn't even know if this was possible, but it was just like, let me experiment. I always tell you guys to experiment on this channel. So that's what I did. I experimented. Basically, the premise was, could I run my life, my work life, could I run my business in 12 hours a week without burnout or like without things falling through the cracks or without, I don't know, like spontaneously combusting or something like that, you know? Like, is this possible? And here were the results. Week one was absurdly magical, okay? On Monday, I believe, and I'll put up screenshots, but I believe I worked an hour and a half or like an hour and 40 minutes, and I got absolutely every single thing I had on my list for Monday done. And I didn't understand what was happening. Like, how is it possible that I'm getting every single thing done in an hour and a half when normally that would have taken me all day? Because I had a normal to-do list. I didn't cut down the things that I had to do. It was my regular to-do list. This got me thinking, right? Like, why would this normally take me all day? And today it only took me an hour and a half. I will also say, though, that this also kind of felt like beginner's luck. So I was like, is this actually going to be a thing? Or is this just like, it's the first day I'm really motivated to work and that's why it's working? Later that day in the afternoon, I felt guilty because I wasn't working and I wanted to add more things to my list. And that was really the first aha moment in this whole experiment, because if I got my entire to-do list done, why did I feel like I should keep working? Only because I did it in less time than I had anticipated it would take me. Why am I feeling guilty when everything I had to get done was done? Why was there still this bad feeling behind all of it instead of a sense of accomplishment? Instead of being proud of myself for getting everything on my list done in an hour and a half, I was feeling guilt that I had only worked for an hour and a half and I could have worked more. Aha moment number one. The lesson learned, of course, is that your levels of productivity are not tied to the actual amount of hours you work. We'll talk more about that later. Tuesday was basically a repeat of Monday. I worked for about an hour and 40 minutes or something like that. Again, I'll put up screenshots. And I got my whole list done. By Wednesday, I started to think that I was being punked. Somehow I was punking myself because it didn't make sense that I had already finished not Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday's to-do lists, but I finished the entire week's list, and I was already working on next week's to-do list. And I had only worked for less than 5 hours in the entire week. This made no logical sense, right? Like, I'm in the middle of my week, voice messaging my business friends. Like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, how is this possible? 5 hours used to be half a day of work for me. And now I had worked for 5 hours in an entire week and gotten more done than I would get in 5 hours a day. That makes no sense. However, I will say this is also when I started getting really excited because my brain was like, well, if I can do everything I've been doing in 30 hours a week, in 12 hours a week, life changing. Now, I will admit, because I'm human and I'm not perfect, and I've had this thing of tying value to like my self-worth to my productivity levels all my life, that my thought was like, because if I can get this done in 12 hours, then imagine what I could do with 30 hours. And then I had to stop myself and be like, hey, Isabel, that's not the point of this experiment. The point of this experiment is that potentially you could work less. By Thursday, I started wrestling with something new. And it was that I wanted to add more things to my list. So because I was already working on the next week's list, I was really tempted to say, oh my gosh, let me just add some more things so that I can keep working and I can keep going because then I can get ahead, right? And this is also a myth in productivity. This is very much a like, oh, if I just keep going and then eventually I'll be ahead of it all. And we don't realize that when you're ahead, then you'll just keep adding more things to the list. And then when you get those done, you'll keep adding more things to the list. And so you never actually feel ahead. You always feel behind. And you're always doing more and more, which makes, again, no logical sense. So I had to remind myself that the goal was not to fill up the time. The goal was to do what needed to be done and then go live my life. But also, I didn't know what to do with my life. Like, I've always had these like million things that I'm saying like, oh, if I had more time, I'd do this. If I had more time, I'd do that. Oh, I wish I had time to do this. And now I had the time and I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. Another aha moment. So by the end of week 1, I had worked less than 8 hours. I got everything on my list done and part of next week's list. There was no fires, there were no emergencies, and I didn't understand what was happening. Now, originally, I was only going to do 1 week of this experiment. However, I felt like this was a fluke. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't feel like this week was real. I felt like it was some sort of fluke. I was having some like really good brain week in which everything was working out in my favor. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do another week because I want to see if this is actually a real thing and if it actually can happen on a longer term basis. After that second week, I was going on a trip. And so I actually wanted to get a lot of work things done beforehand so that I could completely disconnect from work during my trip and take like an actual vacation. And so I was like, okay, that means if I extend this for another week, I could hypothetically work less than 12 hours in this second week, get everything done that I want to do before going on vacation. And also, because I'm working a small amount of hours, I will have time to do the things I need to do before my trip. Because I had, things I needed to buy, I had to pack things, I had errands to run. There were loads of things I needed to get done. Now, again, I kind of thought this first week was a fluke, so I was like, I'm going to deep dive into week 2, see what happens. And I will say, it was still very, very successful. It was a little bit messier, okay? So Monday was a surprise win. Again, like I worked for an hour and something. Screenshots will be put up, and my entire list was clear. And I even had the energy to write, edit, schedule, and send a newsletter in 8 minutes. Who am I? Like, how does that even happen? I don't, but it did. It happened. It was cool. It was great. Anyways, Tuesday was when things started getting a little messy. On Tuesday, I recorded 2 YouTube videos because I wanted to get ahead, like I said, and already have the videos for the weeks that I was going to be traveling recorded. The only thing I didn't realize is that I didn't turn on my mic for the first video. And so I sent it to my VA who edits these videos, and he texted back like, "Hey, your video has no audio." And I was like, "Oh." But I had already worked like my allotted time for the week. Not my full allotted time, but I knew I had a client call in the afternoon, so I couldn't work enough to record that video and not go over my 4 hours and stuff. And I also had some other non-work related things to do. So I decided to leave it there. I had my client call and that was it. Wednesday, I had to re-record these videos. So of course I had to do that work twice. I also had to juggle my tasks, and I was really low energy that Wednesday. I didn't really have this like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so productive and get these things done. So I actually had to rearrange things based on my energy. I did end up working a little bit later than usual. I usually work max like 6 p.m. I'm shutting off my computer. And I believe I worked until like 8 p.m. that day. However, it was because I basically took like most of the afternoon off. And then I came back to my computer and did a few things, right? I think that was a good call in the sense that while I was outside of my normal work hours, I did the rearranging based on what my energy levels were at the moment, and it did work for me. Thursday, I didn't work at all. Life happened. Life happened, and it was happening, and there was a lot of things going on, and I did not work. I did not have time to sit down and work. However, by Wednesday, I had already finished my weekly to-do list. So on Thursday, I was just going to do extra things that were on my like would be nice list, which if you haven't heard of that, my would be nice list is this list of things I do before going on trips, where it's like, I have to get this done before I go on my trip in order to be able to disconnect. But it would be nice if I also get these things done. So to give you an example, I wanted to record in advance 2 YouTube videos. So I had them scheduled for the weeks that I was going to be gone. However, in my would be nice list, there was to record an additional video so that the week that I was back, the first week I was back, I was already ahead of the game. So my would be nice list did not get touched. I only did the things I actually had to do. However, I worked for less than 6 hours on my week 2, and I got everything on my I have to get this done list done. Okay? So week 2, I didn't get any extra things done, but I did get everything I had to do before my trip, and all in less than 6 hours, which, if you realize what I'm saying, is less than half the hours I had allotted, because I allotted 12 hours a week and I worked less than 6. And I still got everything done. So it wasn't a fluke. I don't know how to explain this to you either, because in my brain this makes no logical sense. But what I can say is I learned 3 very big things from this experiment. Thing number 1 is that constraints are powerful. Having a hard limit on time that I was not going to let myself go over made my brain focus like never before. It also helped my brain prioritize because I didn't have time to waste picking the next thing I had to do. I would just look at the list, pick a thing, and go. Because I knew if I spent time trying to decide what was the perfect next action, I would go over my time limits. And I wouldn't have time to get things done. So I chose what mattered the most, or what I just wanted to do in the moment, and just kept going. It got rid of a lot of the overthinking that I have in my brain. The second thing regards the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. I basically proved once again that this rule is real, in the sense that a small amount of focused effort created bigger results than a big amount of unfocused effort had created in the past. The way I would describe it is it's not that I was wasting my time before, but what I was doing was wasting energy trying to work longer than I needed to. And so I was spending time doing things or pretending to do things just to say, oh, I worked for 8 hours today, where I could have done those things in 2 hours and then used those 6 hours for other things. And the third thing is that you don't need to earn your rest by overworking. Like sometimes you've already done enough, right? Rest is not a reward. Rest is something that you should have just because you are a human. Rest is necessary, rest is good, and rest is something that you shouldn't think of it as a reward for like, oh, once I've done this, I can rest. That's a very toxic mindset that I've been deconstructing over the past few years. But also in regards to this whole not needing to earn rest, you also don't need to earn your free time or the time to spend on things that you enjoy. Like I said at one point in this video, I am the kind of person that always says like, oh, if I had more time, I would do this. Or if I had more hours, I would try this. Or I would really love to try this new hobby, but I just don't have the time right now. And now I had the time and I didn't know what to do with it. So make sure you're not using the lack of time as an excuse to not take action on the things that you would like to do. Basically, this experiment reminded me that hours worked does not equate value. And I'm not saying that you should work 12 hours a week. I'm not saying you should work 8 hours a week. I'm not saying you should work 40 hours a week. I don't care how many times you work. What I am saying is ask yourself what would happen if you tried working less hours? What would you prioritize? If you only had 12 hours to work a week, what would make the cut? And if you feel like sharing, I would love to know if you're willing to try this experiment. And maybe it's not with work, right? It could be I'm reducing the time I can spend on cleaning my house to 2 hours a week, right? This is an experiment that can be tested in different ways. But yeah, it was a fun experiment. And I think I'm actually going to keep going with it and see what keeps happening. So also, if you would like an update in like a few months, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, my name is Isabel. I already talked about this channel and we talk all about embracing your weird. So if that's the kind of content that you enjoy, I do make new videos like this every single Friday. So I would really like it if you liked this video, if you subscribed and you become part of the Brand Your Weird community. And yeah, just stay wild, stay weird, and I'll see you in the next one.